This is a story about a Metroid game that doesn't get a lot of love, created by an often overlooked division of Nintendo. In the lead up to Metroid Prime 4, I felt like catching up on the Metroid videos that I still haven't made, and I always intended on covering this one. For once, I don't really feel like including much preamble to this video, other than that I think it is important to shed light on games like Hunters in addition to the heavy hitters, just to give the team that developed it a chance in the spotlight, and to figure out if an experimental technical showcase of the DS's capabilities still holds value today. Spoilers, it does, with a few blemishes. This video is also sort of liminal, as I am currently in the process of moving, and this will be the last video I record and edit in the little room I've lived and worked out of for the past several years. I thought the last video created in this room would be the Mother retrospective, and I wrote it with that intention, but I had some free time to finish this, so here you go. I'm Liam Triforce, and today I'm asking the question, was Metroid Prime Hunters any good? Metroid Prime Hunters was developed by the little-known subsidiary in Nintendo Software Technology, or NST, in Redmond, Washington. Their offices opened in 1998 through a collaboration with the DigiPen Institute of Technology, with several doctorate-level instructors and graduates becoming some of the company's first employees. NST is also located in close proximity to Nintendo of America's corporate offices, in the same business park. Since they were established, they developed several games, including Ridge Racer 64, Pokemon Puzzle League, the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, and most recently, F-Zero 99. They've also developed multiple DSiWare games and applications, and provided development support for a few games as well, though not quite as respected in their contributions to the medium as other Nintendo subsidiaries like Retro Studios in Austin, Texas, or Next Level Games in Vancouver, British Columbia. I still think NST fully deserves recognition for what they've accomplished. Of the games NST developed that actually saw release, Metroid Prime Hunters was probably their most high-profile endeavor, at least in my opinion. A demo of the game's multiplayer component was included with the Nintendo DS when it first launched in 2004. It was a remarkable showcase for the system in all of its facets: graphics, audio, multiplayer, and control scheme. And it was following in the footsteps of the Metroid Prime series itself, which, along with Metroid Fusion, had revitalized Metroid and made it just as renowned as it was a decade prior. Metroid Prime Hunters had a lot to live up to. Development of the game was led by director Masamichi Abe, known for co-directing the first two Pikmin games at Nintendo EAD, and lead technical engineer Colin Reed. Both of them had worked together already on Pikmin and the original 1080 snowboarding, so this was a familiar collaboration for them. The original idea for the game was conceived by producer Kensuke Tanabe, who produced the other Prime games as well. Originally, he wanted Retro Studios to develop the game after finishing Metroid Prime 2, but they were too busy to take the project on, so it ended up in NST's hands. Retro Studios did end up providing input in order to maintain continuity and fidelity with the Metroid series, and it helped to make Hunters feel very much like a Prime game in terms of atmosphere. I think you'll come to see why I feel that way as we go on. NST focused most of their time on the game's multiplayer mode. According to designer Richard Verodi, the hardware dictated their focus on the game's multiplayer mode, primarily due to the DS's much more accessible multiplayer capabilities than the GBA, Wi-Fi connectivity, and its built-in microphone allowing voice chat, at least in private lobbies. I imagine public lobbies with voice chat was something Nintendo wanted to avoid. Either way, it was a huge deal at the time to have the ability to be anywhere in the world, hop on public Wi-Fi, and talk shit to your friends while playing what is essentially an arena shooter in the Metroid universe. This became such a crucial element to the game that Nintendo further delayed it to its 2006 release date so that online multiplayer could be added. With multiplayer being the primary selling point, it's only natural that you might be wondering what that means for the game's single player. Today, it remains the most accessible aspect of the game, as the only way to play online today is through custom servers, and in order to play local multiplayer, you need 3 other people in the same room as you with their own Nintendo DS or 3DS. That doesn't get you the full experience though, as download play only sends a certain amount of maps and other players can only play as Samus. Everyone needs to own the game if they want all of the maps, and to play as all of the other bounty hunters. Also, when the Wii U eShop was still active and you were still able to buy this game there, you wouldn't have been able to play the multiplayer at all. We'll talk more about the multiplayer much later in this video, as well as all of the modifications fans have developed that can enhance your experience there, and the ways in which the experience has been preserved. Honestly, it has never been easier to jump in and start playing, provided you have people to play with. For now, I want to examine the Metroid experience that was crafted from the concepts originally introduced for multiplayer, because even if I feel it has problems, it is very much a Metroid Prime game in spirit. Going into this video, I'm assuming you, as the viewer, have some prior experience with the Metroid series and the Prime games. If you don't, you can either go play them yourself, please do, they're one-of-a-kind experiences, or you can watch my other videos on the games to familiarize yourself with them, and gain some context for my discussion herein. With that out of the way, let's talk about the game. So, as you can see, this is my DS. I'm recording this on July 22nd, 2004. Before making this video, I had never actually finished this game's single-player mode. I almost exclusively played the multiplayer in this game. I can think of a couple of reasons right off the bat for why I never finished it, even after all these years. First of all, I grew tired of the boss fights in this game, though I didn't exactly remember why. Second, I remember pain. I remember getting searing pain in my hands and wrists from playing this game for too long. Because I always played multiplayer in short bursts, I didn't experience it as much there, but extended play sessions of a single-player first-person shooter with this control scheme proved to be quite strenuous on my hands and wrists. I'll expound on those things in due time. When you get to the intro cutscene, you'll be introduced to each of the new bounty hunters this game features. Each of them have their own origins, species, and special abilities, almost feeling as though they wanted to expand Metroid's universe far beyond just what we've seen in the main games. The basic premise is that the Federation receives a transmission from the Alembic solar system about an ultimate power. Samus is instructed to investigate and either safely retrieve this power, or, should that prove impossible, destroy it. This transmission is intercepted by the 6 other bounty hunters featured in the game's intro movie. Ironically, save for SYLUX, none of the other bounty hunters ever appeared again in a Metroid game, and their home planets are never mentioned or explored further, even in this game. Still, having bounty hunters compete with Samus at all is an intriguing concept. We've only ever known of Samus, who, despite having the title bounty hunter, has largely done most of her work in this series for the benefit of the universe, even answering to the Federation, in spite of her reluctance to follow orders. It is a reflection of her nature, of course, but it always raised the question of whether or not there were other bounty hunters like her in this universe. This game gives us a glimpse into that, and before Metroid Prime 3 at that. First, there's Weevil, who looks like he hails from a world adjacent to, I don't know, something like Xanarkand from Final Fantasy X. Some sort of neon-soaked, shiny, technological utopia. It's absolutely soaked in that 2000s vision for what a futuristic metropolis might look like. And on top of that, Weevil is apparently a cybernetically altered space pirate. The very same aliens that raided the series' research station and the owners of the frigate Orpheon. That's some technology they've got their hands on. For supplementary info on these characters, all I really have to refer to is the instruction manual, as the game just sort of pits them against you. You can scan them, but that's all you're gonna get as far as in-game details go. When it comes to Weevil, it is stated in the manual that he was badly injured in a fight with Samus, eventually being transformed into this cybernetically enhanced bounty hunter. Much like the SAX acting as a reflection of Samus after her mission to SR-388, Weevil stands as an embodiment of the space pirates she slaughtered in Metroid Prime, enacting their revenge. It's a great premise, and it pains me that we never learn more. Trace's intro is unsettling as you watch him rise above a swarm of countless Kraken beneath him, and the manual states that he will stop at nothing to obtain total supremacy to the Krakens. Not that Kraken. There's also Kandin, who is shown escaping from an exploding lab in the intro. He was, quote, created to be the ultimate soldier, immortal and relentless. Apparently so much so that not even the scientists that created him could control him. Spire is the last remaining member of the Daimons, which were ancient, silicon-based life forms, and he seeks this power primarily hoping that it would provide him with some answers to what happened to his race, seeing as the Alembic race has been lost to time as well. Noxus is a member of the proud Vozon race, and he seeks the power solely to prevent it from falling into the hands of lawbreakers or those he presumes unworthy. You'd think that he'd work with Samus in order to keep that power under control, but I don't think he wants it completely destroyed either. Then there's SYLUX. In his intro, he effortlessly crushes a Federation soldier, representing the firm grudge he holds against them. He hates the Federation with a burning passion, and in turn, that means he hates Samus for working with them. That's all we really know about him as of this game. Though he is presented as an equal competitor for the ultimate power in this game, and he even has a gunship that he flies around in at certain points, he remains the one to hunt Samus down through Metroid Prime 3 and Federation Force. In Federation Force, because I'm assuming no one watching this bothered to play it, and rightfully so, the timing of that game couldn't have been worse, SYLUX is seen stealing a Metroid hatchling. We can only hope Metroid Prime 4 sheds light on just who SYLUX is, and why he has it out for the Federation. Only time will tell. Though the hunters only get morsels of backstory for this game, I think the team banked on their presence in the game itself, your encounters with them, and your mileage when playing as them in multiplayer. It kind of reminds me of how fighting game characters are portrayed. Sure, you'll be fed bits and pieces of the lore through their interactions with other characters, as well as the way they look and fight, but you usually have to play the game's single-player offerings and hope they have any substantial insight, and even then, you might not be able to piece it all together yourself. This game doesn't have any of that though, so all you can really do is go off of what is presented to you, and your experience playing as them and fighting against them. And to be honest, that's where I really come to admire the hunters. Throughout the single-player adventure, you will be ambushed by the other hunters in both scripted and completely random instances as you move from room to room. While not always as deliberate as the scripted encounters in Super Metroid or Metroid Fusion, it is a pretty awesome way to make you feel like you're being hunted throughout the game, which was a continued effort at this point in the series. The way these hunters just appear as you attempt to traverse each planet creates a welcome atmosphere of uncertainty that the previous games strove to create, especially considering the somewhat cumbersome structure of this game, but we'll get to that. Much like Samus's Morph Ball and bombs, each hunter has their own alternate form, and their own special attack in that form. I love the way Trace creepily crawls around in his alternate form, and I'm always freaked out when he jumps at me. He's fast and aggressive. Weevil can place a turret in his alternate form and attack you independently of it. SYLUX can move incredibly fast and chain his electric bombs together. Candon slithers around like a bug and lays bombs as he goes. Spire can roll into you like an unstoppable boulder, and Noxus can turn himself into a Beyblade. All of these things, in addition to the fact that they use one of the many weapons Samus can find across the game in single player, serve to accentuate the game's focus on first-person shooter gameplay. In the other Prime games up to this point, and excluding Prime 3, aiming was never really a factor. You'd lock onto an enemy and circle strafe around them as you'd fight. You'd still need to think about which weapons you wanted to use to deal with them efficiently, but the game was deliberately far more about exploration and problem solving than it was about being a shooter. Hunters, on the other hand, uses a unique control scheme that I'm sure you've at least heard about, even if you haven't played the game. While there is an alternate control scheme that allows you to move with the D-pad and aim with the face buttons, or vice versa, it is not as accurate or reliable as the primary setup. Your non-dominant hand is used to move and shoot with Samus, while your dominant hand is used for basically everything else, all on the touchscreen. Your Morph Ball form, switching to your missiles, switching between weapons, and most importantly, looking around. Aiming is done exclusively through the touchscreen, and it does allow you to be quite accurate with your shots once you get the hang of it. Hunters on its own is a massive technical achievement and showcase for the DS's capabilities, and its control scheme was not only necessary for the game, it was also born from a period of intense innovation for Nintendo. Soon after, Metroid Prime 3 came out on the Wii, and it too reinvented the way first-person shooters could be played. In Prime 3, you had both the lock-on technique from previous games, and you could aim independently and shoot smaller targets, or weak points, which the game's enemies and bosses took advantage of. The control scheme was so liberating that it became the standard for Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Wii. Metroid Prime Hunters allows you to physically place your stylus over the enemy you'd like to shoot, and much like Prime 3 with shooters on the Wii, it laid the foundation for other first-person games on the DS. Today, it is easy for it to be viewed as nothing more than an experiment. a relic of a bygone era. The landscape for games was much different back then. You might think that had the game been made today, on contemporary hardware, it would have used a standardized control scheme, dual analog stick controls, gyro aiming, or a keyboard and mouse. Something along those lines. But this game wasn't made today, and it probably wouldn't have been made today. This game exists precisely because of the Nintendo DS, and it's important to remember that. Sure, fans have made their own modifications to the game to incorporate keyboard and mouse controls, providing people with a far more accessible way of playing it, but I wanted to investigate if these controls have any merit on their own, or if they were merely a relic that should remain buried. So for this video, I pretty much exclusively used the touchscreen. Whether it was in single player or multiplayer, I was using my DS to record. I played around with other control schemes for sure, like the face buttons, the mouse mod, and even a weird dual stick config I set up in an emulator, but ultimately, I found the stylus on an actual DS touchscreen to be the most reliable way to play this game. Incidentally, Kid Icarus Uprising would use this control scheme 6 years later, and it proved to be an excellent way to play a rail shooter, just as the Wii Remote served them well in games like Sin and Punishment. In Uprising, the stylus allowed you to just physically move over your targets, much like Prime Hunters. Both games are proof that the setup is worthwhile. What I've realized in playing them, however, is that it isn't the control scheme itself that is unreliable, it's our own fleshy human hands. Perhaps it was because I had smaller hands back then, or more likely it was because I'd only extensively played the game's multiplayer mode, but I seldom experienced pain playing this game when I was younger. Matches in public lobbies typically only last between 5 to 7 minutes, and you get to rest your hands in between matches. In single player though, I was usually playing for a long period of time, and that's where the cramps really started to set in. Any vague memories of pain I had trying to play the single player before came rushing back to me in vivid detail. I know the intent with most portable games is to play them while on the move, so you usually only have time for brief sessions anyway, but I feel like they must have caught this in testing, right? Or have we just been holding our DS the wrong way this whole time? Either that, or testing sessions were designed around people only playing for 15 minutes at a time. I don't know. Maybe they just figured it was a necessary evil and shipped the game anyway. Something that I learned after making my retrospective on the Wii was, while the console was accessible to those that didn't normally play video games, it also alienated quite a few other people, either due to them preferring a traditional controller, or because they physically could not play for one reason or another. Ultimately, we now have options. Options for gyro aiming, options for traditional controllers, options for adaptive controllers, and so on. Options drive accessibility. It's easy to pick on a control scheme like this today, but I would consider its utility worthwhile enough to not warrant its downfall, especially in the context of its release. Its downfall comes with it being the only way to play the game, especially if players have physical difficulty adapting to it. And thankfully, fans have developed other ways to play. But let's look beyond the control scheme for a moment. Because it is such a huge barrier of entry for people, it often clouds any discussion of what this game does right. And Metroid Prime Hunters left a great first impression on me, right down to the menu music. Much like Metroid Prime 2's electric guitar in its menu, Prime Hunters does an awesome job of getting you pumped to play the game through the series' trademark instrumentation, and believe it or not, this game's soundtrack was not composed by Kenji Yamamoto, composer for most other Metroid games. It was brought to us by Lawrence Schwedler and James Phillipson at NST, who did an excellent job throughout this game in emulating his style of composing for Metroid Prime. From the moment you step foot in the Celestial Archives, the ambience is almost skin-crawling. Listen to that low humming, that diegetic sound that seems to evoke the high-tech equipment of the station, but then the strings and choir come in, and you just feel unsettled. It reminds me heavily of Jerry Goldsmith's score for Alien, but I'm sure you've heard me talk about all the similarities between Alien and Metroid long enough by now. The introduction to this game heavily reminds me of the introductions to the first two Prime games, where Samus stumbles upon unspeakable carnage that took place just moments before she arrived. You scan the space pirates and the fallen Federation soldiers, and you just have this indescribable feeling that you're next. In Hunters, however, you know you're not alone, according to the transmission from your ship at the beginning of the game. So every single moment that passes before a hunter shows up just creates more and more dread. The atmosphere of Prime Hunters altogether is impeccable. A lot of care and attention to detail was placed into making Hunters feel like an authentic entry in the Prime lineage. Though Elenos and Arcterra borrow heavily from Chozo Ruins and Phendrana Drifts respectively, each planet in the Alimbic cluster has its own flavor, and by scanning artifacts and lore in each area, you'll learn that these planets are the remnants of what was once a highly advanced society that fell victim to something called Goria. Though there is some advanced technology left to rot in this solar system, the planets are largely left in ruin, with almost nothing even resembling civilization left over. Maybe this is a product of the hardware, but the claustrophobic rooms in this game make it feel even more isolating and hopeless. The music evolves as you make your way further into each planet. Elenos initially has traces of the elements of Chozo Ruins' theme, and a bit of Magmore caverns to symbolize the occasional lava. But as you revisit the planet and descend to its depths, it sounds much more dead and menacing. Arcterra creates an inversion of this. When you first arrive, it is bone-chillingly quiet, and you can hear the wind whistling through the cold as you explore. On your second visit, you'll be exploring the depths, and that's where you'll start to hear elements of Phendrana Drifts come in, though the melody is altered and played in a minor key, in an attempt to differentiate Arcterra from how calming Phendrana could feel. Phendrana had a whole ecosystem still functioning upon Samus's arrival, but Arcterra is nothing but the scattered, dead fragments of a once thriving planet. Then there's Vesper Defense Outpost. Holy crap. At first it doesn't seem like anything too remarkable, it's just littered with a lot of high-tech and still functional equipment. But it's your second visit where things get creepy. The area's initial theme has a funky groove to it, but as soon as you reach the Guardian Chambers, it turns into this. As you wander around the chambers examining the guardians that have been frozen away, and you even spot a dead one in a doorway, your ears are filled with these ghastly drones and industrial noises that wouldn't be out of place in something like Silent Hill. The music here is an extension of the whole game's atmosphere, really. In the quiet of Arcterra, or the uncertainty of the Celestial Archives, or the curiosity of Elenos, enemies like Guardians, or even other hunters, can strike from anywhere at any time. The entirety of Metroid Prime Hunters is a continuation of the kind of design that Metroid Fusion exhibited, in which you are constantly second-guessing whether or not you are truly alone, and whether or not something will be around the corner. The majority of this game is spent exploring and fighting like in any other Metroid game. There's energy tanks, missile tanks, and even ammo expansions for your various other weapons, obtainable throughout the game. However, as I've mentioned, at certain points throughout the game, you'll be interrupted and ambushed by the other bounty hunters. These can sometimes be scripted events, but other times you'll run into them at random. This atmosphere of uncertainty serves to differentiate Prime Hunters from the other games in the Prime series, and it also offers a bridge to the game's multiplayer due to the arenas you'll often find yourself in. All of this game's multiplayer maps are woven into the single-player level design, as each of them are designed like arenas in the event of a hunter encounter. Whether you're fighting SYLUX in the Vesper Defense Outpost, or Spire and Elenos, the levels are designed like multiplayer battle arenas, and the gameplay quickly shifts into a Quake or Unreal Tournament adjacent rush of first-person combat, with the only difference being that you're fighting computer-controlled hunters in the campaign. I gotta be honest, that seamless feeling on its own makes the game really impressive. but the game also goes the extra mile in creating a rich atmosphere in line with the Metroid series. All the while, it moves the series forward, honoring the direction Fusion took, with its own lovable twist. This seamlessness extends to the weapons you find throughout the game. Much like the beams in the other Metroid games like the Wave Beam or Ice Beam, Samus can find alternate weapons that have their own advantages and disadvantages depending on the situation. I don't care to remember all of their names because they're color-coded, so I'm gonna call them by their colors. It's easier to remember their effects that way anyway. The orange one shoots an exploding projectile similar to the grenade launcher in Quake. The blue weapon shoots a beam of electricity that latches onto its user like Witch Bolt in Dungeons & Dragons. The red beam is essentially the same as the railgun in Quake. The purple beam can ricochet off of other surfaces. You get the idea. It not only gives everyone an even playing field by allowing them to collect all these weapons, but it also injects more variety into each fight, so that each player isn't just playing as the same character with a different morph ball form. I don't think they're huge game changers like the beams and their upgrades in the original Metroid Prime, with those beams' utility being clearly defined and allowing for some unique solutions in combat. You also have to remember that these weapons were designed around the multiplayer first, so they were meant to be seamlessly integrated into the campaign. That being said, because they are this game's primary upgrades, they do take a lot of the excitement away from progressing through the game. Sure, they can be powerful, but they don't hold a candle to the kind of gameplay that the Wave Beam, Ice Beam, or Plasma Beam enabled in Metroid Prime. On top of that, Samus doesn't gain any new suits in this game, like the Gravity Suit or Dark and Light suits, or the Grapple Beam, or the Power Bomb, or Super Missiles. This means that a lot of your exploration is only gated by the doors you open with specific weapons. From what I can remember, I didn't ever have to use my weapons for unique applications like you would with the items I mentioned in previous Metroid games. This removes significant layers to Metroid's gameplay loop, and most of the level design is entirely based around unique problems tuned to Samus's innate abilities. For the most part, this works. When playing through the game, you can feel the loss of those layers to the Metroid formula, but the game is still fun and worthwhile to explore despite that. That said, this also leads to them going into some very strange territory. The structure of this game is kind of repetitive to begin with. Although it starts out alright, with each planet being completely different from the last in your hunt for the 8 octoliths, you eventually have to return to each planet once more to collect 3 relics, which will open the path to another octolith. While you are taken to new areas, as mentioned earlier with Arctera's creepy guardian chambers and whatnot, the very notion of doing this introduces its own problems. First of all, with each octolith, you'll have to fight a boss. I love the way the boss arenas look. They remind me of a similar area from Metroid Prime 3. The first 2 bosses you encounter are simple, but alright on their own. The first one is just a spinning tower that fires lasers and lights up its weak points, and you have to shoot them before you can expose the core briefly. Harmless, if a bit drawn out. The second boss feels like you're fighting a Combine Advisor from Half-Life 2, though you can only draw it out by shooting the tentacles that give it power. A step up from the last boss, for sure. The next boss is... okay, it's a rehash. Surely the next one will be different, right? Uh-oh. The game recycles the same 2 bosses for each of the 8 octoliths you collect. Granted, they introduce new attacks each time, like the way Slench here chases you around the arena, but it does not curb the repetition in the slightest. And for a game series that I believe prides itself on its boss encounters like Ridley and Kraid, this is hugely disappointing. I guess I'd be more forgiving if I enjoyed the bosses more, but even then, I don't think I'd enjoy them enough to fight them 4 times each. Moreover, remember how I mentioned some of their ideas had to be contingent on Samus's core abilities, since you didn't unlock any real items or upgrades this time? Well, some of their challenges are bizarre. In the upper levels of the Celestial Archives, you have to navigate around platforms that can send you into the cold depths of space. If you fall here, it means instant death. To my knowledge, Metroid has never done this because death is always treated as the ultimate punishment. Because your only checkpoints are save stations that you have to manually save at and discover. It makes the threat of the SAX even more terrifying, and it heightens the uncertainty and discomfort in pretty much every Metroid game. It's why ink ribbons are such a cool mechanic in Resident Evil. You can only create a safe haven to return to a finite number of times there. Even when a Metroid game has in-depth platforming challenges, your punishment for messing up is either a loss of progress or health, if you fall in lava or acid, for example. In Hunters, when you fall out of bounds here, you just get sent to your most recent checkpoint, which means right as you entered that room, either from a door or a portal. It completely destroys any immersion to make a single mistake in platforming, and just have Samus die. The Morph Ball sections in Alanos that have instant death traps in them are also a bizarre design choice for the same reasons. Metroid Prime Hunters doesn't actually have any save stations, instead relying on these checkpoints if the player dies, which makes the game much easier and less tense than any other Metroid game. To be fair, with the frequent encounters with hunters in this game, I understand this approach to an extent, but their implementations in the challenges I outlined earlier is a bit strange. Speaking of the Celestial Archives, the upper levels here have this puzzle centered around teleporters, which I have mixed feelings about. Imagine a Metroid game where you have to memorize portals that take you to disconnected parts of the map. It's like that one chapter just before reaching Zen and Half-Life, but with much less guidance in its level design. It's basically just a memory game. Sure, it's true to the labyrinthine nature of Metroid itself, but it's much too confusing for me to enjoy piecing it together. To balance this discussion out, there are some genuinely brilliant moments in Prime Hunters' problem solving. In Arc Terra, there is a giant force field that prevents you from reaching the other portion of the level right away. You're meant to realize, perhaps in a moment of desperation, that you can scan the portal through the force field to activate it, just as you would any other warp point from Samus's gunship, meaning that you can just return to your ship to continue onward from the part of the level that you previously could not reach, even disabling the force field from there. This is a much better example of how portals are utilized in this game and the game's puzzle design altogether. The depths of the Vesper defense outpost ask you to rush between points as fast as possible with just Samus's abilities and your memorization of the area's layout. There are genuinely great moments throughout Prime Hunters, and I don't mean to generalize when discussing its problem solving. The artifact collecting can lead you to some new and wonderful areas that became some of my favorite parts of the entire game. It's just that they also led to some of my least favorite parts too. One final negative note I have about this game's campaign, though, is its utilization of escape sequences. After collecting the first Octolith in the Celestial Archives, you are tasked with escaping to your gunship. In other Metroid games, this would mean because the place is about to explode or something. But no, the Celestial Archives remain intact after you escape to your gunship. Worse yet, the game has an escape sequence every time you collect an Octolith. So for every single Octolith, you need to run all the way back to your ship due to the planet's security protocol initiating. And you visit each planet twice. I'm fairly certain the only reason they have these sequences is to force players into fighting certain hunters that they might have avoided before, as well as just to pad out the game. Otherwise, players would run to the nearest warp point they've set up and just head for the next planet. These escape sequences also demonstrate inconsistency in the portals that you can set up around each planet. Like I just mentioned, you can set up warp points at 2 major points in each level, but during the escape sequence, these warp points will be inactive, for some unexplained reason. Apparently only certain portals lose power though, because the ones that are necessary to escape, like in the Celestial Archives, still function. It makes the whole thing feel contrived. I love Metroid's escape sequences, but they are used sparingly for a reason. To make you value your upgrades when at the beginning of the game, and to remind you that even after conquering the game's final boss, you're still not done. They're everywhere here, and they water down a staple of Metroid that used to feel so powerful into something that makes me roll my eyes every time. They read as nothing more than mere padding. All of this serves as more evidence of this game's single player being mostly an afterthought by design, built from the assets and ideas developed for the multiplayer. Aesthetically and atmospherically, it is beautiful. And there is still fun to be had. I don't want to discredit their work entirely. But these problems make Metroid Prime Hunters' single-player adventure one of the weakest core Metroid experiences I've had. I'm not saying it's bad, hell no, but its execution was certainly shaky. To be fair, I feel the repetitious elements of this game, as well as some of the measures taken to extend the campaign's runtime, could have been due to the DS's inherent limitations, and to the team's credit, they did all that they could to flesh out this campaign. Even with its more obvious band-aid solutions, it is still a remarkable effort when it gets things right. Let's talk about the final boss, though. After navigating the final area, you'll be face to face with Goria, who skewers the other hunters effortlessly. Goria sent out that distress signal itself at the beginning of the game, just to lure the hunters to its location. The Alembic log entries also warn of Goria's destructive power throughout the game. The boss forces you to attack with the weapon that is weak to whatever weapon it happens to be using, and when using them, it demonstrates a wide array of its own unique attacks. On its own, the boss is a lot of fun. A great way to round out a game focused on these weapons, and an ultimate test of skill. But it's what happens after defeating the boss that matters. Goria explodes, killing Samus and the hunters with it. What? So apparently, because this game doesn't have any additional rewards for players beating it quickly or with 100% completion like other Metroid games, instead the true ending is unlocked by scanning and completing the Alembic Prophecy, as it hints at what you need to do, mentioning each weapon in a specific order. The final area also strongly attempts to signal the correlation between your weapon colors and the colors of the panels in Goria's boss arena. This is all meant to convey that you shoot the panels in that room in a specific order to ensure that you can truly defeat Goria and escape with your life. Yeah, so unlike the other Prime games, Metroid Prime Hunters makes scanning the environment a requirement if you don't want an ending that sucks. The pieces of the Alembic Prophecies can be scanned both at gateways to each planet where you land your gunship, and in specific locations throughout the game. While the concept of locking the proper ending behind this is a bit silly, I must admit, I am a bit of a sucker for cryptic puzzles like this. It's annoying when you can't solve them on your own and you feel stumped, but they are incredibly satisfying to piece together yourself. You can blame the original Zelda and games like Tunic for me being this way. Either way, Goria's second phase grants you access to the Omega Cannon, which means that you will be blasting away at the boss with an all-powerful combination of the weapons you collect throughout the game, while also bouncing and weaving between platforms in a vertical map that is begging for a multiplayer deathmatch right away. It's as if the longest yard from Quake 3 Arena was stacked vertically. Of course, this map is available in the multiplayer as well. Either way, with Goria defeated, Samus is able to escape with her life, and the spirits of the Alembic race thank her as she flees. Oh, and the hunters survive too. There's still hope in seeing them again someday. I will admit, Metroid Prime Hunters' campaign is not going to satisfy fans that come to the series for emergent gameplay, or sequence breaks, or even upgrade-based progression, really. However, it executes the sense of atmosphere made famous in Metroid Prime beautifully, all while offering a seamless integration of the gameplay that the multiplayer component offers in a single-player context. It has some serious flaws that some may find unforgivable, but I do not consider my time to have been wasted with it. Just from how much I've had to say about it, you can probably see that there is value in experiencing it. Who knows? You might see something in it that I didn't. That should be the major takeaway from a video like this. If the game interests you, no matter what I perceive as strengths or faults, you should try it out for yourself and form an opinion. Speaking of which, I did also mention that a lot of the game was beholden to its multiplayer components, so let's talk about it. Incidentally, this is where I spent most of my time with this game. At first, it might just seem like any other 4-player deathmatch game, but when you consider the unique capabilities of each hunter as outlined earlier in this video, I consider it to be a fusion of both an arena shooter like Quake, though it resembles Halo more in how long it takes to secure a kill, and a hero shooter, which wasn't much of a genre at the time of this game's release. Team Fortress Classic did have defined classes, but their personalities were not as fleshed out or memorable as in the game's proper sequel. This is where that fighting game analogy I used earlier truly comes to light. The hunters' presences in multiplayer matches more than make up for their lack of backstory in the main game. Watching Weevil be a little freak dropping turrets everywhere to defend nodes, or Noxus spin around like a Beyblade, or seeing Trace tackle people from out of nowhere, It is more than satisfactory storytelling for me. These characters come to life in matches. This is also where you'll learn some of the more intricate aspects of each character, as each of their affinity weapons provide unique effects. Trace, for example, can turn invisible while standing still when using the railgun weapon, otherwise known as the Imperialist. Yeah, I guess I should start using their proper names now. Anyway, this affinity means that Trace can stay in one place in order to stalk his prey, hence why so much of his gameplay is built around pouncing on people. Candon can use the Volt Driver to mess with another player's vision, which can also help as he slithers around like a coward and lays his little tracking bombs. I always hated fighting Candon online. Noxus, believe it or not, can actually freeze players in their tracks with the Judicator, while Spire can use the Magmaul to fire explosive shots that have a much larger range of splash damage than even a regular missile. Actually, the missiles in this game are kind of annoying to use in multiplayer, where everyone is moving around at a much faster pace than in single player, so Spire having that advantage is appealing. My favorite affinity weapon effect is probably the one that SYLUX receives with the Shock Coil. Not only is the Shock Coil one of the easiest weapons to use as you don't really have to aim, and it drains your opponent's health like nothing else, when SYLUX uses it, he can absorb his opponent's health. I'm not kidding. Needless to say, he is my favorite character to play as in the multiplayer. I have to compensate for my dogshit performance somehow. Weevil is probably the most fascinating character in this game, though. While recording for this video, we discovered that his turret has some really cool properties. Well, I say we, but it was King K. He really wanted credit for discovering Weevil's potential. While his affinity supports his gameplay strength of avoiding direct confrontation as well, since the Battle Hammer can be used with him to knock players back, as well as send them off of cliffs, his turret is the star of the show. Every time you go into your alternate form with him, a turret will be placed, and that turret will take on half of your health bar. You can destroy it by switching forms and placing another one if you'd like, but that will cut your health in half again. Thankfully, you can still collect health while you're in that form, and that health will not only heal you, it will also heal your turret, keeping both of you alive. That said, when your turret takes damage, you will take damage as well. You and your turret are bound together. Its pain is your pain as well. Much like other hero shooters today, Metroid Prime Hunters actually has characters you can play as that don't rely heavily on aim in order for you to succeed, while others reward you for mastering the fundamentals, and I think that's part of the reason why, despite all of us having a really hard time actually killing each other, we still had a great time. In addition to the typical deathmatch modes, there's Prime Hunter, which I thought would be this game's version of Juggernaut, but it's more like an inversion of that mode. Once a player gets a kill, they become the Prime Hunter, and your Prime Time counter begins to tick upward. I'm not kidding, it's really called that. While in Prime Time, your health will steadily decrease, and you can't replenish it at all. In order to maintain Prime Time for as long as possible, you have to make sure you have a decent amount of health when you first get the kill, and then avoid contact with any other hunter to prolong your life for as long as possible. Once you die, the next person to get a kill will secure their position as Prime Hunter. If they kill you before you can go out on your own terms, then they become the Prime Hunter right away. It's an incredibly fun mode. Simply by making the Juggernaut of the match feeble and marked for death, it becomes a hilarious rush, no matter if you're the one being hunted or if you're one of the hunters. There's also nodes, which is like this game's version of Call of Duty's Domination, for example, and with Weevil in play, it can get toxic. Oh, and of course, this game has its own Capture the Flag mode. You can't go wrong. Essentially, the game has everything you could want in terms of game types, built on a fantastic foundation with unique combat applications and a high skill ceiling to keep players coming back. Custom matches also allow you to adjust the game to your liking, and there's even a proper ranking system in the game's matchmaking. There's also voice chat, which uses the DS's built-in microphone. For a while, Nintendo hosted rankings on their website, and to this day, there are still people who take the game seriously. 5 years ago, when I made my Metroid Prime retrospective, I received a message from someone who was apparently ranked in the top 5 of European players on Metroid Prime Hunters. They told me that if I needed any knowledge from someone who played the game at a competitive level, that they'd be willing to offer that knowledge. I have no idea where they are now, but I hope they enjoyed watching this video. this one's for you. Truth be told, there is a lot to learn about this game, and even though I don't play it frequently, every time I play it, I learn something new. It's no wonder to me that this game had a life beyond its initial launch. I mean, when its demo was bundled with the DS at launch, it only contained the multiplayer component in an early state. This game was all about the experience of playing with friends and other Metroid fans around the world, and the developers just happened to build a decent campaign out of what they had. If there are any former or current NST developers watching this video, I just want to say that in spite of any criticisms I had about the game, I think you've created something quite special. The multiplayer gave people a chance to come together and create their own stories just by unwinding with a cool FPS game. And you've honored Metroid Prime all while maintaining a distinct vision. This game has a legacy of its own that is well worth discussing. And to top it off, I think Metroid Prime Hunters served its purpose exceptionally well as a showcase of what the Nintendo DS could do. That era of hardware might have come and gone, but what matters is the art that came out of it, as I outlined in my Nintendo DS retrospective. By the way, even though the servers were taken offline in 2014, you can still play this game online using custom servers. On a Nintendo DS, all you have to really do is change your DNS settings, and you'll be able to connect. This also works with Melon DS, and as mentioned, fans have developed ways to play the game with an alternate control scheme, like a keyboard and mouse. Today, it's never been easier to play this game and enjoy what NST created. With SYLUX appearing in Metroid Prime 3, Federation Force, and now Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, the team has left their own permanent mark on the franchise. According to Richard Verodi, NST was excited when they found out about SYLUX's cameo at the end of Prime 3, and I can only imagine how they feel about their impact to now. That's the beauty of creating something that you believe in, seeing it resonate with others, and watching it grow far beyond your initial vision for the project. Metroid Prime Hunters is an odd entry in the franchise, but I enjoy it for how emblematic it is of the era it was released in. How it stands as an attempt to do something completely different with an existing framework, and for the memories I have with it today. So that's the long answer to the question, was Metroid Prime Hunters any good? The short answer is yes, but I appreciate you for watching this whole thing nonetheless. Before I sign off, I am honored to be able to showcase Lost in Cult's new installment of Design Works. I've actually written for Lost in Cult in their Console Chronicles book, and I previously promoted their Outer Wilds installment of Design Works. This installment is all about the Alan Wake series. Remedy Entertainment is one of my all-time favorite game studios, and I have a ton of respect for Sam Lake as a game director and writer, so this was an instant yes from me. Like other books in this series, Alan Wake Design Works focuses on collecting concept art and assets from the games in question, Alan Wake, American Nightmare, and Alan Wake 2, while also documenting development insights and stories, shedding light on the games and the process of bringing them to fruition, from a mere idea in the mid-2000s all the way to today. And it contains interviews from key figures in the game's production, like Sam Lake, director and writer, Matthew Peretta and Ilka Vili, the voice and face of Alan Wake respectively, as well as many more talented individuals at Remedy responsible for bringing the games to life. Much like the Outer Wilds book I discussed last year, attention is paid to the atmosphere of the Alan Wake series in the book itself, particularly the Mind Place from Alan Wake 2. The book's visual design is a full realization of the game world, immersing you in it as you read. And to take that a step further, there's also a deluxe edition available exclusively during the pre-order campaign from August 18th to October 17th. This edition comes in a dust jacket based on Alan Wake's novel Return, and it includes several extras, including a Coffee World poster, Polaroids of the crime scenes just like the one Saga organizes in her Mind Place, a full map of Bright Falls, a card signed by Matthew Peretta and Ilka Vili, and even a complete manuscript for the novel Return, as well as other goodies shown on screen here. This is pretty much the ultimate package for any fan of Alan Wake. After October 17th, the standard edition will still be available, but you'll have to act fast in order to secure the deluxe edition. Lost in Cult's books are awesome for those passionate about games as a medium like me, and I have to thank them for supporting the channel and for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. If you'd like to check out the book and support this channel all the while, Use the code LiamTriforceAW at checkout, or use the link in the description for 5% off Alan Wake design works or anything from Lost in Cult's store. I've been Liam Triforce. Thanks again for watching.